Hey Sarah, good to be meeting you. I just want to say at the start here that I'm a huge fan of the show. First question I'll run by you is, Joe as a character often gets comparisons with characters like, Dexter back in his day and Walter White and that sort of thing. I think what's interesting is he probably sees himself as suave and expert in what he's doing in the same way. But what I love about the show is while it makes clear to us that he has those delusions, in practice, he's not that good at it, right? So I'm interested in how you as the writing team balance letting the audience know about how he sees himself while in practice showing how often he messes up.
A lot of the reason he messes up so much is because he's not completely honest with himself. Frequently, he thinks to himself, I'm going into this situation to talk reason or get evidence or turn them over to the police. He's not walking around thinking, I'm a murderer and I have gotten away with something like 10 murders coming into season 4 that we know. Dexter was a great show that came before us and we didn't want to repeat it. We also were just coming off of Breaking Bad, also Mr. Robot. There's this certain genre of anti-hero show, but they kind of know what their superpower is, their dark superpower. And when we talk about Joe, he just kind of wants to be the perfect boyfriend, really. He wants people to stop lying and saying they've read books they haven't. And he wants to, cook dinner for the girl and make her life great. And then everything else, he has this quite labyrinthine justification. Really, that's as much as anything, it's what season 4 is about. Because he's faced with this other killer who does not have the same compunction, we are forcing him to become more self-aware about who and what he really is.
Yeah. I think that's what keeps me hooked. Just like I keep wondering, will it ever connect for him, right? What he is, but no, it's fun. Following him in his delusion there. So speaking about a bit of what's happening in season 4, what I think is so fun to track season over season is how this show completely reinvents itself every single time. You have a through line, you have his arc, but each time we're in a new setting, we're in a new place, and we're satirizing a new sort of culture. Is there a pressure in the writer's room to reinvent it in a fun way every single time? And how do you think about where you're going to go next?
That's like the whole pressure. We really have to do that every season. I've been making television for quite some time, for long enough that when I entered this business, it was before streamers, but also things were procedural. Right? There were all of these shows that ran for 22 episodes a season where you didn't get much character development and the cop or the lawyer or the doctor solved something every episode. It's never really been my thing. And so I just think of it as the trade-off to be able to be a creator in a much more exciting, for me, television era, where it's like you get to tell crazy, subversive stories that are deeply psychological and entirely, there is no closed-ended part of this. It's entirely serialized. On the other hand, you can't do the same thing either you're going to do the same thing all the time or you have to say you won't do the same thing. Yeah. So Greg Berlanti and I hold really tightly to the core themes and ideas that started in Caroline's book. And we hold those up every season. And then we plug it into an entirely new kind of structure.
You mentioned, the source material. From what I understand, season 1 hewed pretty closely to it, right? Then you veered further and further to the point where now it's in a very different spot. So how do you approach, where you are going to look back to the source and take things from that versus where you're going in a new direction?
We don't look back to the source anymore. We've run out of book that helps us. Meanwhile, Caroline is continuing to write these amazing novels. But the moment we made Love a Killer, did you see Everything Everywhere All at Once?
I did, yeah.
She's over there being a superhero and we have the hot dog fingers in another parallel timeline. When we started, Caroline and I had this conversation that we were going to be siblings, but maybe not even twins. And the first 2 seasons were such a gift. Her books have so much actual, not just characters, but story that you can translate pretty straightforwardly to television. That's more than you usually get when you're translating a novel. Novels are just a different beast. So it did felt like the net had been pulled out from under us a little bit, but it was time. It's fine. It's good.
So you mentioned wanting this to go on many, many seasons, and it could, and how the conceit could keep refreshing itself. But I'm wondering if you have that vision in your head of whenever Joe does end, what does that look like? I know you can't tell me exactly, but is it a positive? Is it a negative? Like roughly, where do you want him to be when this is over?
This is a very spoilery question that you're asking, but I will say this. We have always had conversations about how to balance everybody's desire to see Joe face some form of justice and the core truth that guys like Joe often don't face a single consequence in the long term. So what it's forced us to do is talk about the kind of consequences that society is not going to mete out to Joe Goldberg necessarily.
That's part of what keeps me watching too. I want to see him get it in the end. And there's sort of like a perverse thing to watching Breaking Bad too, where you know he deserves it.
Yeah, at least Walter White was great when he started. I mean, he cared about his family. He was done. Like, I never lost the empathy I had for him because he was good when they started. Joe was a bad guy at the end of the first scene.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's ever been, I think we're much more free to just root for whatever we want to root for. But even when we were when we were going from network to network and just pitching this idea, and I checked this morning in 2014, that's when Greg and I first took it around.
Yeah.
We said it's very easy for us to forgive men like Joe. It's very easy for us to judge women like Beck. And that has remained true as we've changed the story. That I'm still shocked that we go back and we like Joe in the next scene, but we do.
Last question I want to ask. I consider this show to be sort of in the thriller genre. So what I want to ask is, what is another current thriller show or movie or something whose writing you really admire? And I'd love to hear a bit of why.
Thriller is a very big, wide word for me. So if we just back up and we're like, let me think, the last couple of things I've been watching Abbott Elementary.
Okay.
It does not have strong thriller aspects, but I just finished the limited series Fleischman is in Trouble, and I feel like it kind of did. And I have been recommending that to writer friends because I think it's interesting to watch a show not knowing exactly what the thing is going to be, but that a mystery does come up. So I will point to that one and say it could not be more different. Although it is a guy in New York and a lot of voiceover, but it could not be more different. But there is a mystery that comes up in that one, and in a strange kind of neurotic way, a bit of a thriller.
Is there anything else that you want to say to get someone excited for season 4, something you should know going into it?
I don't know what I can tell people to get them excited, but if they're watching this and if they're planning to watch, I can say thank you. Thank you. I mean, when you launch a season 4, mostly the feeling is just gratitude that you've gotten to make the show for so long. So that's how I feel today.